Brother Faubert, thank you so much for coming on.
Great to be with you.
How are you doing?
Doing well. Everybody here is safe and healthy and self-isolating, so
It's good. It's been quite a crazy time, and obviously a lot of people are cooped up in their houses, and a lot of people are self-isolating as we should, and to be safe in this time, and going a little stir crazy, and then we get a little Bible quizzing news, and everybody is obviously extra excited and trying to dissect it a little bit and figure out what's going on. So I asked you to do this just so that we can really have a good conversation about it and really talk through it thoroughly, maybe have some examples, hypothetical examples and situations, and then maybe you can share some of the thought process and decision making that's been going through this.
sure. I'd love to be as transparent as I can be, and I stand by the decision. It certainly wasn't a unilateral decision on my part. There were many eyes that saw it, so I'm glad to be able to explain.
Oh, well, so first, talk us through, having to cancel the last 4 remaining BQEs, because obviously that was a terribly difficult decision, I'm sure. But when did you know that was a decision that kind of had to happen, and then what was the that process like?
Well, it happened rather quickly. Obviously, it was a very fluid situation. We were in Anderson, South Carolina, with the Southeast BQE underway. We had taken certain precautions already for that weekend to create distance, and the old chicken wing bumps and fist bumps, and we were wiping down buzzers and keeping things as antiseptic as possible. But things were changing. News was coming in. We were monitoring the situation. Was blessed to have Brother Carson there on site as well. And we talked about the possibility going forward of just what would happen. He sought other counsel as well, and then counseled. And it was after we had left the extravaganza that ultimately the decision was made, and we were all in agreement. And we got word out within just a short period of time. I was on the road back, and we were writing up, crafting the wording and everything to get word out to folks as soon as possible. So it happened. It was a late afternoon, early evening that Saturday.
We had just had a meeting to plan our BQE at our church, and as we were sitting there, I was just thinking, like, man, I really could see this unfortunately getting canceled. Yeah. and it did, which is really sad, because BQE is like probably my second favorite weekend of the year. But
it's unprecedented. We've never had to cancel a BQE before since we've started hosting BQEs. So
goodness.
Yeah.
This question did just pop in my mind. As far as like host churches, this affects me probably more than a lot of people. But do you think that we'll just kind of redo it, or do you think we'll just go on to as it's scheduled for next year, or no thoughts to that yet?
I've had some thoughts. It's premature to state publicly, but maybe not next year right away, depending on just the geography of the locations involved. But we will try to get them back into the rotation as soon as possible.
Yep, no problem with that. I think we're maybe hosting junior next year. And I'm sure, that's a church by church, district by district basis. So thank you for answering that. Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's talk through the decision that you have come, not just you, but that you and the junior program, and I'm sure Brother Marshall and many, many more people are involved in this process. So please just talk us through beginning to end the qualifying process.
Well, the process prior to getting into the qualifying process, if I could touch on the process by which we came to this conclusion that we did. it can seem rather complicated, and I recognize that. I've had to do some mental calisthenics myself. I don't have a degree in statistics, so um, but at the same time, when we were going to release this, we felt it better to err on the side of being transparent and just sharing with the quiz family as much as possible, but still try to be as pointed as we could, rather than simply giving like, okay, we used a formula and this is the result. We didn't want that sort of opaqueness.
If I could ask a question real quick, do you think it made things more complicated that one BQE had already taken place?
Well, that sort of does dovetail into what I was going to say next, in that the complicated nature of it was really a huge balancing act of a myriad of factors, balancing the fact that we'd already had one BQE and we wanted to be fair to those teams that had gone and participated in good faith, balancing that with, well, the other four BQEs are canceled. And those teams are not going to have an opportunity. We needed to balance larger districts and with smaller districts, and we needed to balance, a district's history with perhaps its current state of affairs. Balancing districts that may qualify historically more teams at BQEs with districts that qualify historically more teams at their district finals. All of that, how it plays out. At the same time, trying to balance, one of my core things in this whole process is being that we want to be as inclusive as possible. As you can tell when we get into the details of it, we've where we can use the highest attendance possible and extend the net as far as possible, within reason, to include more teams than we have done so. And but at the same time, I need to balance that inclusivity with the logistics of the national tournament. I mean, we've got limited time, limited space, limited personnel, limited quizzes, so we have to account for that. So again, it's sort of a balancing act, and then balancing the BQE spots versus the district final spots. And really we've kind of divested the two anyway, and dealt with them differently, but they do have an effect overall in the total number of teams that would be eligible for nationals. So it was, you've seen those acts in a circus where they've got spinning plates, right? They've got like 8 spinning plates all at the same time, and they're trying to get, that's kind of what it felt like. I'm like, how do we balance all of these different factors to come up with something applicable across the entire breadth of North America? Perhaps there's a few that aren't happy with what we've decided, and I guess I understand that anytime in ministry you make a decision that you're not going to please everyone. But I heard a saying years ago, when I was a young person, it's never left me, that even when you don't agree with your pastor's decision, you can agree with his heart. And while there may be hopefully only a handful of folks that may nitpick some of the details of the overall decision, I pray that they agree with our heart, with what we've done here.
Well, I truly, not just in Bible quizzing, but in any leadership position today, I don't envy anyone that has to make really tough decisions. I don't envy our political leaders or our state leaders, our federal. I don't our pastors, our teachers, our principals. I mean, I can't imagine having to make really tough decisions right now. And unfortunately, you are one of those people involved in some tough decisions. And if it's me talking, BQEs are canceled. We're thinking it through, like, hey, what could they possibly come up with? And things are thrown around like open nationals or nobody go, no extra teams, too bad. And then I heard a couple things. I was like, oh, that makes sense, and that would be interesting. But this seems to be even more. Just you could tell there was a lot of thought, and to me, this is more generous than I anticipated. Just me personally, and I think I obviously can tell that a lot of thought and heart was put into this, and the people that made this decision truly want what's best for our quiz community. So thank you.
Certainly, and I'm blessed to work with some great people and are accountable to the youth executives who I can bounce ideas off of, and so it certainly, as I mentioned, this is not my sole decision, or not, but there were more than just my eyes on it and fingerprints on it. So,
Okay, so are you ready to dive into it?
okay, as best we can, we'll try to make this plain. Sure.
Okay, I told you before, as long as we come out of this and it's crystal clear to me, I think I'm of an intelligence level where if I get it, I think everyone else is going to get it. So.
All right.
Okay, so I'll read the first point and maybe you can expound on it.
Sure.
Okay, so the first bullet point you have on the announcement, and for anyone watching that has not read it, this is available on seniorBibleQuizzing.com on the announcements page.
Yes.
And if you read it, there's a little blurb before it, but we're going to jump right into the bullet points. The first one is take 2020 Southeast BQE results as is, which that means that Gainesville and Barberton, Ohio are qualified and their districts get an extra team, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
I'm just verifying in my mind that the teams are qualified. Yes.
Yes. Gainesville and Barberton were the top two teams. So Florida, if they get 7 teams, they'll have 3 of those teams qualify. Same for Cincinnati, or not Cincinnati. Same for Ohio.
Yes.
Okay. Then we continue on 2019 results plus 2019 results for all other BQEs.
Right. I would clarify to say that it's per district. So whereas the 2020 results, as is, you mentioned Gainesville and Barberton specifically in the intermediate division, in the experience division. In the intermediate division, they qualified 3 teams. So those are attached to those teams specifically, whereas the 2019 are on a per district basis and
Yes.
not attached to the individual teams that qualified last year.
Right. So we were blessed enough to qualify last year. That does not mean that Bloomington is qualified this year.
That's correct.
That does mean that Illinois will have an extra team.
That's correct.
Because we had an extra team last year.
Yes.
Okay. And that goes for all other 4 BQEs. The only one that's not in that way is the Southeast.
That's correct.
Okay. Question, this just popped in my head. What about the 2019 results for the Southeast BQE? Those don't count.
No.
Okay.
So I did go back and include those in our calculations because it's not based on, we only used the BQEs historically to identify the districts, right? Which teams would have qualified, and then the districts that they're from, so we can then allocate those districts the spots afforded to them.
Okay. I believe that is clear. So just to recap, Southeast 2020 Southeast BQE results stay, but then basically take the districts that were awarded teams last year in 2019, and you're getting those again. Okay.
That's correct.
So, okay, this is where it gets a little tricky. So that's clear. This is the next bullet point, and I believe the second and third bullet points are kind of linked together, correct?
It all kind of is daisy chained here, yes.
Okay, so the second one is apply highest attendance to each BQE going back to 2017.
Yes.
Okay, so first of all, let's just for anyone that may not be super familiar with how just BQEs work in general. Typically at a BQE, the top 2 teams if it's below 25 teams attending that BQE, the top.
It's actually, yes, there was an adjustment for 2020.
Okay.
So it's actually below 24. So
Okay.
at 24 teams, you have that third.
Okay. So if you have 23 or less teams at a BQE, the top 2 teams would qualify for nationals. Those teams would be going to nationals, locked in for sure, and their district would be allocated an extra team. And then if you have 24 to 31 or 32, then you would get the top 3 teams, and then so on, just like district finals.
Right. Yes,
So,
it's all laid out in the manual.
yes.
Yeah.
So now this bullet point says apply highest attendance to each BQE going back to 2017. So what does that mean?
So we wanted to create a baseline across all of the BQEs, right? Or I should say for each BQE, so that when we did our average from 17, 18, 19, we would be working from the same baseline. So the South Central BQE would have the same attendance. And I think we had 75 teams total. I think it was 34 and 31 last year, which was the most. And so we took that and applied it and said, okay, well, what teams would have qualified in 2018 had the attendance been the same? What teams would have qualified in 2017 had the attendance been the same? And having established that baseline for the South Central extravaganza, then we could create averages for the districts that did qualify.
Okay, so I believe the district or the BQE that would this most affect would be the South Central, correct? I believe so, maybe.
Well, we typically have more participation at the South Central and specifically from Texas, the Texas district, Louisiana district. Yeah.
So so can we just lay out that example of South Central? So can you talk through how that affects that BQE? So in 2000, in one of the years, they had the top 5 intermediate teams qualify for nationals.
Yes.
So that means if you take 2017, 2018, 2019, you are looking at the top 5 teams from each of those years. And then each district that qualifies, that is in those top 5 teams, let's just say points. They get 1 point for each team that was in the top 5, 2017, 2018, 2019.
Yes.
Okay. And then you average that out
over those 3 years. That's correct.
I have no idea if this is true, but let's just say Texas, an intermediate, had 2 teams in 2017 qualify, or in the top 5, not even qualify, in the top 5, and then 3 teams in 2018, and then 2 teams in 2019. So that would mean 2, 3, and 2. Average would be 2.333 or 2 something like that. It would be somewhat over 2, below 2.5.
Yeah.
So how many teams would Texas in this hypothetical scenario get?
Well, because it's not at that halfway mark, we would round down in that case.
Okay.
As opposed to, so not every fraction, if it works out to be 2 1/4, we're not sending 3. So we're trying to, yeah, but anything from 2, 2.5, or 2 2/3 or something like that would have been rounded up.
So if your district averages 2.5, that means that they're going to get 3 extra teams this year for nationals qualifications.
Correct.
Okay. And then if it's below 2.5 or between 2 and 2.5, it's going to be 2. So it's rounding to the nearest whole number.
Yes, because we're dividing by 3 to create this average. It ends up typically, being 1/3 or 2/3, and we don't really hit on a lot of 0.4 or 0.5 sort of thing. So it's a little easier that way.
Gotcha. Okay. That makes sense to me. Okay. So the third bullet point we kind of have already talked through. Identify
Mhm.
which districts would have qualified using the BQE participation criteria in the 2020 manual, but using the highest number of teams that qualified from any of those 3 years.
Yes.
Okay. Are there any more you want to expound on that to try and make it clear? That's
No.
probably the toughest piece of this, is really truly understanding it.
Right. Well, and it comes back to be able to create an average, right? If I've got like a really large pie and then a really small pie, right? Think of back in math class when you started studying fractions, right? You had to find the common denominator,
Right.
right? So you had to take that small pie and project or extrapolate it, so then you could work with the fraction more easily. It's basically the same thing that we've done. We've taken the highest attendance and uniformly applied it, so then we can create an average.
Okay. I can't. I know there can't be too many BQEs that had more than 20. Okay. Well, was it? So is it 24? If they had more than 24 teams, or they had 24 or more, any of those years, even in 2017, then you take the top 5 or top 4.
Well, at 24, you'd start the third.
Right. Top 3.
Right.
Sorry, I apologize. Yes.
Yeah.
Take the top. You take the third. Okay, that makes sense. Okay. Well, on to the next point.
Okay.
So then you average which different districts would have received extra spots at BQE's rounding up. So the rounding up wasn't clear to some people. We talked through that already. We're rounding to the nearest whole number. Okay.
And we can clarify that wording online.
Okay. And then the last bullet point is use either 2020 spots, 2019 spots, or the 3-year average of spots, whichever is greatest per district, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So if I'll just use Illinois as an example. If Illinois has one extra team in a division for 2019, but if you take the average of the 3 years of BQE and we get 2 teams, then we would get 2 teams.
Correct.
Okay. I think that is clear. So there's basically for most teams, there's basically 2 things. Either last year, your 3-year average, but then it adds a little bit more complication with the Southeast BQE this year.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So that makes sense to me. Okay.
Clear as mud.
Clear as mud. All right. So then now we're past all the BQE qualification spots. You've also decided to change district finals and how that works. So I'll read through this. Other than the 2020 Southeast BQE spots, which specific teams received, all of the spots will be allocated on a district level and not to specific teams. Okay, I'm sorry. You covered this earlier, but this is really good to point out again. So just because we qualified at BQE last year does not mean my team, Bloomington, Illinois, is qualified this year. I wouldn't want that to happen, because I believe that teams need to earn that right, and I believe that Gainesville and Barberton did earn that right. They should definitely keep theirs. So district coordinators will be apprised as to which spots will be allocated to his or her district. How are you communicating that out? Are you just one-on-one, just connecting with them?
Yes, I've reached out to several already, and yeah, I'm contacting them directly to make sure that I can answer any questions that they may have about the process, and to confirm that these are the spots being allocated based on the historical record that we've employed here.
Okay, so for anyone listening, please don't email or text Brother Faubert. Just wait, and your district coordinator should let you know how many teams. Okay. Next, in addition, NABQT spots based on the number of participating teams at each district's finals will be adjusted from a factor of 5 to a factor of 4. So this is kind of what I thought was going to happen, but I didn't expect all of the other BQE stuff. I thought that this made a lot of sense to me. So usually, if a district has 1 to 9 teams or 2 to 9 teams, they qualify 2 teams. And if they had 10 to 14, they qualify 3, 15 to 19, and so on. Now it is 2 to 7 qualifies 2, 8 to 11, 3, 12 to 15, like you said, factor of 4. That makes sense to me. So why was that decision made?
Well, because the BQE spots that are allocated each year really are divested from the district finals qualifying spots. We felt that we had to treat them separately again. However many BQE spots were allotted would not necessarily account for the attrition that may take place over these. We don't know how long it's going to be, but some districts, they held a tournament in February. They've had to cancel for March, possibly for April already. We don't know if it's going to extend. Maybe, things will be wrapped up and they can hold the tournament in May. Maybe their next tournament is district finals. Well, you're talking 3 months, and we understand there may be some quizzers that just get demotivated and drop out, unfortunately, and that would lower the number of teams at district finals. And so we wanted to try to account for that, so that those teams who do keep on keeping on would not be penalized in their opportunity to attend NABQT.
Okay, so that makes a lot of sense to me, and like you said, okay, so there was a concern brought up about what about, as far as BQE goes, what about the intermediate divisions that are going to benefit from this, from teams that are currently in the experienced division, like recently moved up, like an intermediate division was very strong, and then those teams are now in experienced, which previously was maybe a little not as strong, a little weaker division, which is now strong. Now the experienced division is strong and the intermediate division is weak, but the intermediate division is going to benefit from these changes. What do you have to say? And obviously, there's nothing that's going to make everyone happy, and there's nothing that's a perfect decision for everybody. But what would you say to those concerns?
Well, I would say that I recognize them even when we were working through, and that was the most challenging element to try to address. That migration from new teams into the intermediate division, from the intermediate division teams into the experienced division, from experienced division teams aging out, or they're in college and not quizzing again, to account for that migration between, that was the most challenging thing. I don't know that it's a perfect solution, or that we can account for one that's going to be broadly applied across all districts. My consolation is that when thinking through the district finals qualifying spots and lowering from a factor of 5 to a factor of 4, that it's most likely that the teams that or the quizzers that we're going to lose in this 2 or 3 month hiatus are going to be those who are less experienced, less invested, less
Tenured.
That's a good term, sure. And it's more likely that we will retain a higher number or higher percentage of experienced division quizzers who are, more invested, more tenured, that way. By more invested, I'm not meaning that they study more. It's just that they've had more years involved in quizzing. So in that sense, to give both divisions that sort of factor of 4 really tends to amplify the experienced division, possibly a little more than the intermediate division, in fact. So that, coupled with what you pointed out, that it's possible that intermediate teams would gain more, and the experienced teams just having migrated now into the experienced division and not benefiting as much from those BQE qualifying spots, that the two of these sort of work hand in glove with each other to balance things out. That's my consolation, at least, and my hope. I guess the results in the end will bear out just how accurate that will be.
Okay, I think that is very fair. All right, just to read the rest of this off, while we trust that all district finals will be held, there's no way to know just how attrition may or may not affect districts. We will monitor the situation and reserve the right to adjust accordingly with further announcements as necessary. Thank you for extending grace during these fluid circumstances. Okay, so why was that wording put in there, if you don't mind me asking? Like, what do you think would have to happen for you to be like, okay, now we got to change this?
Well,
or I guess, what are you monitoring? And
the language was kind of vague, simply because we don't know how things are going to shake out. We don't. One of the things that, as I already mentioned, we were trying to balance was to be as inclusive as possible, but not compromise the logistics of holding a national tournament. Well, if attrition hits districts very hard, then we may need to account for that somehow. If it doesn't, then we may have a lot more teams at nationals than we've had previously, and we need to try to account for that. So we just don't know how things are going to shake out over these next several weeks, and so that's why we said what we did. So I hesitate to paint any sort of what if scenarios. I think the media is doing far too much of that at this point. So we're just trying to be prudent and take things as they come. So we've sort of left ourselves an open door there to say, if things change in a way that we had not foreseen, then we reserve the right to make further changes.
I think that is completely fair in this time, in this situation. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. All right, I have a few questions. Just some of it's clarification stuff, and some of it's some questions that other people had that were interested in knowing. So we talked about the rounding clarification. That was good. Are you accounting for teams that have gone to different BQEs across the years? So like you're keeping track of the districts, because teams like to travel. So obviously, has all of that been taken into account and kept track of as far as the teams from districts going to different BQEs?
Well, because we only used the BQE attendance to identify those teams that qualified via the BQE spots, it really didn't have an effect on that.
Okay.
Right. So regardless of what district or what BQE a district attended, if they qualified, we counted them.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you. Now, you said that we are assuming that your wordage, we're assuming state finals would take place, which we should. We need to prepare as it is, and we really, truly hope that it will take place. But do you think that that is possibly mandated? Things are mandated, and we may need to push back some state finals. And is that just kind of a case-by-case situation?
At this point, we don't know. Yeah, it may be a possibility. And I have emailed coordinators to say, as a contingency, for those who may have scheduled their district finals earlier in the available time period, the manual allows beginning May 15th and extending to June 30th. So I have emailed coordinators to say, if you can look at a date, if your finals are scheduled in May, if you can look at a date in June as a backup, that would be advisable.
Okay.
Do we know? Nobody knows at this point.
Right. I'm just convinced nobody knows anything about anything. If you watch the
Well, my experience is the more I know, I don't know.
news. You don't know all the things out there that you don't know about. That's how I
Mhm.
like to say it. All right. Let me see. Do you think if you had to estimate, do you think that these changes will actually increase the total number of teams at nationals?
That's possible, and again, time will tell. It all comes down to the matter of attrition that our districts suffer through. I think the number of teams that are lost during this time. I pray that quizzers keep pressing on, but I understand. Certainly, God forbid anyone gets sick or for health reasons has to withdraw. But if you're at home, you've probably got as much or more time on your hands than you've ever had before. So it's a great opportunity to get into the work more.
That's right.
You're
I keep reminding my kids, you've never had this much time to study, but it's very hard to say, and this is definitely, and this has been said a lot, but this is the time that we can truly check ourselves and see why we quiz and why we do this, why we're involved in this ministry. And
Yeah.
I think that it's very appropriate, like others have said, that we're doing Psalms this year. I think it's very appropriate.
Mhm.
Okay, a couple more things. Uh, with the potential increase in numbers, and I believe you had considered this before. Um, are there current plans for 3 sessions at nationals for the senior division for seniors?
In each division, you mean 3 sessions in each division?
Yes.
Um, I can't speak to that specifically. I can say that after last year's very aggressive schedule, we had begun looking into creating those fifth and sixth sessions, that additional third session in both divisions, and planning has progressed to that end. So that remains a strong possibility. But if we don't need it, then those are expenses that we're not going to incur. So we'll just have to see how things shake out. But we are planning, just as we encourage teams to prepare for the best, right, and continue on as if things, we are doing the same.
Okay. Thank you so much. All right. Well, with all that, I think it's clear to me. I think and we also want to say that juniors is doing the same thing, right? So
Yes, we have been in close contact and consultation with Brother Terry Marshall, the junior Bible quizzing director, through this whole process, and juniors is taking the same approach that we are, and I think that benefits it. It shows a wonderful, continuity and solidarity across the quiz ministry.
it does, and that it's good. I appreciate that there's not two completely different qualification formulas. So we have one. Okay, so the last thing, what would you like to say to the quiz community? Obviously, this is a really tough time for a lot of quizzers and coaches, and we're trying to stick together. I don't know if people saw, but Darren Venus in the Illinois district started a Psalms 23 challenge, which honestly, Brother Faubert, I think we'd love to see you try it. It's you film yourself with a timer and to see how quickly you can quote Psalms chapter 23, and a little bit of competition in a time where we don't have competition. Our competition.
Uh-huh.
So stuff like that. That's fun.
That that definitely beats the push-up challenge, I think.
Yes.
I've never seen so many lame push-ups in my life.
I'm not even gonna attempt it. You would shame me if you saw my push-ups. Um, but obviously we're doing things to try and to stay close as a quiz community. And what would you want to say to us in this time?
Pursue. um,
Mm.
As you mentioned already, I don't. This didn't escape God. This didn't slip by him somehow. I think we're doing Psalms for a reason this year, and it may become even more clear as the weeks go by. I was reminded of the fact that David was moved on by the Spirit to spontaneously speak forth these Psalms and to capture them, many of them, if not most of them, in times of isolation, times in the wilderness, times in great distress and confusion and fear. You could just read through them and feel what he's going through, and for us to be learning those as well. And yet the result of that wilderness time, that isolation, whether he was in the hills as a shepherd, or on the run from from Saul, excuse me, or on the run from Absalom, his son, the result of that were these beautiful Psalms that we get to learn and benefit from today, centuries and centuries later. I just think that God can extract from our quizzers, from our coaches and parents, such beauty, from times of this, like this, just as God did with David. It's not a psalm that we're studying this year, and I don't believe it's a Psalm of David, but in Psalm 46 it says to be still and know that I am God. And man, it's difficult to be still when things are go, 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 right? And you've got all of these commitments and stuff, and we've been afforded an opportunity now to be still and know that I am God. And a little note that I made in a message that I spoke not too long ago was that the confidence in knowing the great I am, right? That I am God, he says, is found in stillness with him. And so we have an opportunity in studying these Psalms to build relationship and get to know God in such a deeper way if we can just quiet all the noise of the media and the news and everything. Yes, we can stay connected, but if we could just quiet all of that and just find stillness with God, there will be a confidence in knowing him all the more through this time. So thank you for the opportunity to share, to speak to quizzers, to try to explain all of this and everything that went into it. I appreciate the opportunity to be transparent as well.
Well, thank you for coming on. Really appreciate it a lot. I was when I saw it, I was like, I would love to talk to you. And obviously, we'd love to talk to you anytime. We've enjoyed having you on the podcast previously twice. So thank you for this. Thank you for this a lot. For anyone that doesn't know, this is a Bible quizzing podcast where we love to do scripture breakdowns and question breakdowns and interview quizzers and coaches and quiz officials and quiz masters and the like. So I enjoy doing this and I appreciate the opportunity.
All right. Well, thanks so much.
Well, thank you, everyone. If you have any more questions, leave Brother Faubert alone. I'm sure that if you want to message me or whoever, if I don't know the answer, I will find out the answer, and we will get through this and figure this out. And I'm excited to see what the rest of the quiz season has in store.
Yes, I'm looking forward to seeing the district finals results and seeing as many people as possible at nationals.
Oh yeah, we have a lot of hanging out time to catch up on in the fellowship. Right. So I'm really excited about it. Thank you so much for coming on.
All right, God bless.